Welcome to the Why People Buy podcast, a podcast about the motivations and decisions behind why people purchase food and beverage. I'm host Seth Waite, buyer psychologist and partner at Schaefer, and today our guest is JW Wiseman. And so welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations on recently winning the Inc. 5000, which if people are not familiar with, it is an absolute amazing award about being one of the fastest growing private companies in the United States this year. So congratulations.
Thank you, Seth. Yeah, our team is thrilled to be on the Inc. 5000 list and thrilled to be here with you today to talk about buyer psychology. It's a really fascinating subject that's very close to my heart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your name, right? Your brand name, Curious Elixir, right? Like it's tied to this concept from the beginning of asking questions, being thoughtful, wanting to know why. So I'd be curious as we get started in the conversation, if a friend was going to introduce you to somebody, what would they say about you? And could you tell us what that is as a way to introduce yourself?
Oh gosh, if a friend were to introduce me, let's see. Well, I'm thinking of one friend in particular, Lady Sue, who is an old friend and kind of a food content creator for, decade plus. And when she introduces me to somebody, she's like, "Oh my God, you've got to meet JW. He's a fantastic human and you're a fantastic human. And here's why." And she'll go into a litany of, deep cuts from us meeting at, on the dance floor at South by Southwest, 12 years ago. And he's an incredible dancer and an incredible entrepreneur. And he has this brand, Curious Elixirs, and they make the best non-alcoholic beverages in the world. And they help your body feel good. And you just have to know him. So I've heard her say some variation on that a few different times. And I am also just a very curious human. I don't have all the answers, but I have loads of questions. And I've definitely found throughout life that when you have lots of questions, then you start to find the answers, and the answers can be, they really change your life.
That's awesome. Yeah. And there's no amount of searching that would have helped me realize that you're a really great dancer. So it's nice that you mentioned as part of the process. Where are you located as well? Where's home
Located?
for you?
Yeah. So I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I currently live in New York City. I've been living in New York City for the past 23 years now. 22, it'll be 23 in November. And so I'm currently at Club Curious, which is our sober speakeasy in the heart of Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Very cool. And you've been there for now at least 2 decades in New York. Does that make you almost a native, or like, do you never get that status in New York?
That's a great question. In terms of native New Yorkers, I'll never be a native New Yorker, and that's okay. I still love living here. This is my home. And, I feel like even though some native New Yorkers are like, "Oh, you're one of us. You're one of us." Like at my gym in Queens, they're like, "Oh, you've been here 20 years. You're one of us." I'm like, "Thank you. Thank you so much." I feel very included. At the same time, because I didn't, literally grow up here. I feel like I have some of the trappings of being a native New Yorker, but in my heart, I contain multitudes like most of us do. I feel some kinship to Oklahoma. I feel some kinship to New York. I feel some kinship to the Hudson Valley where we started Curious, a decade ago. And that's probably the place where I feel most at home is going to be the Hudson Valley, because I just feel like a kinship with the land there, and the people there are lovely. And it's a place where you're not too far from the trappings of the city, but you also have incredible farm country there and incredible history. I mean, it was the original vacation destination for New Yorkers, 150 years ago. That's yeah, that's kind of it's a mix. I'm a cocktail of different homes.
Yeah, well played right there. And I think we all are, right? Like very rarely are we defined by just a single period of our life or location. So you talked about Hudson Valley and that being kind of the origin location of your brand. Um, Tell me more about that. Like, what happened there? What experience did you have, or what really kind of kicked off this idea of, hey, the world needs to solve this problem? Like, what was it?
Like millions of Americans today, I needed to drink less alcohol. There was one night where I had 20 drinks in a night and I woke up the next day without a hangover. And that was actually what scared me. It scared me that my body could take in so much alcohol and not feel it the next day. That's what's kind of scared me. I should be hungover. I should be wrecked. I should,
Yeah.
something was not right there. But at the same time, I was an owner of a whiskey bar, a partner in a nightclub. I was head of marketing at Thrillist, all of these roles at the same time. And when you're working in New York, you can drink an awful lot and still be highly functional because you don't have to drive anywhere,
Yeah.
even pre Uber days. Now we have Uber and Lyft and all of these ride sharing. But so I could drink an awful lot and I loved cocktails. I loved wine. I loved beer. I love these fascinating, complex, sophisticated drinks and being able to share them with other people in a social setting. It's one of my favorite things in the world is to go to um, an amazing bar, an amazing restaurant, an amazing performance venue, and have something that's sophisticated. And when I started drinking less after that crazy night of 20 drinks, I realized there's nothing sophisticated or elevated about having a club soda,
Yeah.
and there were no non-alcoholic cocktails. You're lucky if you got like a ginger beer or something, and that's filled with 60 grams of sugar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You're making a big exchange.
yeah. So for me, it was like, why can't I make a non-alcoholic Negroni? Or why can't I make a non-alcoholic margarita that tastes amazing and has some spice to it? And why can't that drink actually make my body feel good, but not have any of the down effects?
Right.
Not have a depressant in it. And so it was these questions that really led me to start tinkering in my kitchen, one afternoon in the Hudson Valley and being like, oh, well, how would I do that? How would I do that? So I started researching. I started trying to find different people that could help me solve these questions. And that led me on the journey. That was back in 2012 and early 2013. So it was 2 or 3 years before I turned curious into an actual company when I started to realize, wow, there's 100 million people in America that have 2 drinks or less each week. And there's 75 million adult Americans who don't drink at all. This is a staggering number of people. And as you've probably seen in the most recent poll, like fewer Americans are drinking today than at any point in recorded history.
Yeah.
And, the thing that hasn't gotten reported, which is interesting, is that the top 10% of alcohol drinkers drink 75% of the alcohol.
Oh, wow.
So the top 10% is really what's driving consumption there. So when you think about the bottom 90%, that's really people that are not necessarily drinking a ton and they're being wildly underserved and they feel left out. Like
Yeah.
when I would go and I would hang out with friends that are having a drink, there was nothing special for me. There was nothing that I could like legit raise, my glass, my bottle and say, here's to you, here's to your health. And let's celebrate life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And I totally understand. I'm usually like the guy holding a Diet Coke, that's part of the process. And to your point, not special, not this really great opportunity to be involved. So here you are, 2012, you're like curious as first food scientist, essentially making mixes, starting to have conversation. It takes a couple of years to kind of get that going. And how did you go from, hey, this is a great idea that I'm noticing that I want to have in my life, to starting to talk to other people and see what the market look like? Because those stats are incredible, right? Like huge opportunity from a market size standpoint. How'd you bridge that gap between the statistics of like really big opportunity and who's my first customer? Where do I begin? What did that look like?
It looked like having a lot of conversations with people that I was already friends with, and then starting to have conversations with people that I didn't know. So when I reached out to, my friend, who's an actor on Broadway and on TV, and he mentioned to me that he had been sober for a year, and I was stunned. I was like, wow, because this used to be like a hardcore drinking buddy, and I was drinking less at this time too, and cutting things back. And he shared that, yeah, when he goes out, there's nothing interesting to drink. And I was like, okay, there's another one. My sister-in-law got pregnant. She wasn't drinking. Okay. She was very much into wine. What is she going to have when she wants to unwind for those 9 months? Another friend of mine, was training for a marathon, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I can't have any alcohol right now." It's like, wow, there are a million reasons why people are not drinking. So why don't we make something for them, And that's something where it really came from those conversations, and then starting to talk to people in the hospitality industry. Being a bar owner and working in restaurants and clubs since I was 18, people are under the impression that alcohol is where you make your money.
Yep.
And so there was kind of a stiff hill to climb there, and it's taken a few years, and we still are only probably 10% of the way there, to have people understand that when you're working in a restaurant or a performance venue or any of these places, you will make more money and serve people better if you have high quality non-alcoholic options,
Yes.
and that's something where like the conversations there took a lot longer than it took for the actual consumers, because they're gatekeepers of taste, and they're thinking, their whole framework is, I make money off alcohol. I make money off alcohol. I don't make money on my food. I make money on alcohol. No, you make money on drinks.
Yes.
And if half of your clientele is not drinking, you have a massive responsibility to serve them. That's what you're doing.
Yep.
And you will make more money too. It's a win-win. So those conversations are the ones that are still ongoing, and people are starting to get it, and you're starting to see more soft cocktail menus and non-alcoholic beers and wines, but we still have miles to go before we sleep.
A lot of education, right?
Yeah.
That's part of that. So when you started to formulate everything and build your first products, what what's the first experience where suddenly it felt like, okay, we've made something and now it's taking off? Like, what was that first milestone for you that like this was working?
The first milestone I can remember is, after our Kickstarter, and um, we reached our goal. There's hundreds of people who are supporting us, and we're starting to get some press behind it. And we're like, wow, okay, we're really tapping into something here. People can, at least the consumers can see, wow, they really want to make something for us. I was writing off being social as a sober person, and
Yeah.
that really was the first milestone when we had the successful Kickstarter. Where it started to be like, whoa, this could be mainstream, is when the Wall Street Journal reached out to us and was like, hey, we want to cover you, because Curious Elixirs and like a major multinational company was starting to come out with a line of mocktails, which, by the way, we're not mocking anything. We make real things that are exciting and interesting,
Yeah.
but a lot of people call them that, and that's okay too. But that was the first moment where it was like, whoa, okay, if we're going in with a photo in the Wall Street Journal, even though we're this tiny company with with 1,000 customers,
Yeah.
then we might be tapping into something here.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine that's a huge moment coming off the back of a Kickstarter campaign, right? Where it's like, we're just testing the waters and got some good signals, and then bam, mass media opportunity as part of that. And so coming out of that article, where did you go from there? Was this hey, we're going to work directly with restaurants and hospitality and go directly to those sources? What's your model from that perspective? Retail, direct to consumer? How are you?
Direct to consumer. Yeah. Direct to consumer is our first
Yeah.
major channel, and is still the majority channel for us. Because so many of these things have been ingrained in our culture, it's going to take a generation to change these. We're 10 years into what I look at as a 40-year mission. When you look at generational change, it's not a 20-year process. It's not a 30-year process. It's 40 full years of changing behavior before you can get something to stick. You look at, the temperance movement, for example, which had good reasons for being around, but ultimately failed because it's a brittle argument to say, this is bad, don't do that.
Yeah.
What is a better argument is to say, look at how amazing life can be with less alcohol and more fun, more memory, fewer calories, less sugar, stuff that actually makes you feel great, and you want to hang out, and you actually feel more connected to your friends when you're hanging out, having an adaptogen fueled drink, than if you're having booze. And that, I feel like it's going to take a long time. So direct to consumer was like, let's start there, because we know that we can appeal to and change individual people's lives right there. And then we will grow this huge army of millions of people across the country that will then help us enable to go into retail and go into restaurants and start to go into some of these other channels, which admittedly we have taken a long time to do. We have a small handful of distributors, but we have, thousands of direct to retail store and restaurant relationships.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that are probably the strongest, is when you have a direct connection to the people that you're serving.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love the idea of being patient, right? You're an Inc. 5000 company, so it means you're growing really fast. And at the same time, you're taking this 40-year perspective on how this will actually turn into a real change. I think it's something that across the better for you, category, people are really struggling with, which is like this idea that, well, how come everyone's just not getting this? How come we're not just making these changes? How come we're not removing all of the bad ingredients and adding all the good? And I think your patience is definitely a key part of what's helping you guys to be so successful, because I see lots of brands who come in, they see that there's a need for this, and then they get so frustrated in the process. Because to your point, right, it's been more than a decade that you guys have been on this journey, and it takes a decade to build the momentum. But then they get frustrated and oftentimes can't kind of see it through as part of it. That's awesome. So as you guys started direct to consumer, what was the first products? What were your like first flagship products that you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first flagship is behind me over there, Curious Number One, which comes in glass bottles. But the one that I've got here also is our latest one, Curious Zero.
Yeah,
And so they're all like these stubby bottles. Here's another one, Curious Number Eight, which, it kind of feels like you don't know when this was developed. It's like, is this a product that's from now? Is it from 100 years ago? I can't quite tell. Um, and that's kind of on purpose. We wanted something in a nightlife capacity that you could hold, pour it into a glass if it's one of our cocktails, pour it into a wine glass if it's one of our non-alcoholic wines, and nobody's going to know the difference because, rewind 10 years ago, there was actually a lot of stigma around not drinking.
yeah,
Um, and so the first product that we developed, Curious Number One, is a Negroni Spagliato, a non-alcoholic sparkling Negroni that literally boosts your mood, gives you more serotonin and dopamine precursors, and helps balance your cortisol, the pain molecule, with this incredible ingredient called rhodiola. It's been used for thousands of years, and it's a naturally occurring kind of succulent root that
wow,
helps balance your mood and boost your body. It's incredible for muscle recovery. Like Andrew Huberman takes it every day, rhodiola. And this is something, when I learned about it back in 2013, that was the first kind of functional plant that I fell in love with.
yeah,
And so I was like, ooh, what if I can make a non-alcoholic Negroni, but make it lightly sparkling and have it boost my mood and my energy? Fantastic.
yes,
So that was the one that we really went with. And we really leaned the first few years into being a flavor first company
mhm,
because nobody had really even heard the term adaptogen before.
yeah,
People were like, functional plants? You mean like weed? And I'm like, no, not like
yeah,
weed. um, and not throwing any shade at cannabis is just not what we
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Um, and so that is still like going to take a few years to kind of educate people on what they are. And our whole line is designed to be a primer on functional plants so that for people who want to go deep, they can go deep. But for consumer psychology first, it's like, this is the world's best, most interesting, most curious drinks you're going to find. So if you're like me and you're not drinking, you want to have something that's exciting and sophisticated and has a beginning, middle, and an end, then I have the drink for you. It's going to be one of these 10.
that's awesome. So you guys have gone from, number one, you now have 10. Is that how many SKUs are currently available?
Yeah, we release one new flavor a year. And
That's awesome.
we've probably have 2 more years and that might be it. We'll see. Maybe we'll have some seasonals though. Maybe we'll have some limited edition stuff like you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it. How do you come up with these new flavors as you're thinking about customers and what they're looking for? What's your process as you're thinking about this new, product coming out in a year? And do they usually come out in January, or are they more random than that?
It depends. Each flavor takes, somewhere between 18 months and 2 years to kind of perfect. So the next one that's coming out, I was just with our food scientist this morning, and that'll probably be out maybe in time for January,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, And,
We won't hold
the
you to
road
it.
yeah, good, thank you. The roadmap really is informed by me being a huge cocktail nerd and a big wine nerd. When I first started serving tables, um, it was at a high-end steakhouse in Tulsa, and I got to learn, French wine service, and I got to learn all about California wine and tannins, and what's an oaked Chardonnay versus one that's more buttery, and all of these things. And
Yeah,
so all of this is like kind of informed, my process. But where do the initial ideas come from? They come from things that are already wildly successful in alcoholic drinks. A Negroni is a top 5 seller globally, has been on and off for 80 plus years.
yeah.
So that's kind of a tried and true bittersweet herbaceous, aperitif that gets you ready for a meal.
Mhm.
And it's one that I kept coming back to time and time again. Um, in its alcoholic format. And I was like, okay, what if we can take what's good about this and leave behind some of the things that we don't like about it? For example, a Negroni has a shit ton of sugar in it.
It does.
So
Yeah,
I don't need that. Most people don't need it. So, like, instead of having it finish on the bittersweet side, let's have it finish bitter and dry, like a lightly sparkling, dry Lambrusco.
yeah,
Um, so that's kind of where that came from. And that's something that is really important to me, is to also have something that won't trigger people that are in recovery. So they always need to be different enough that we're not trying to make identical copies of drinks that have
right.
existed before in their alcoholic formats. Frankly, that's boring.
Yeah,
And it's something that already exists in like Italy. You can get like a non-alcoholic little bit, bitter Negroni soda for like €2,
yeah,
but it's filled with like red number 40, and it's filled with tons of
yeah,
sugar and natural flavors. And don't get me started on natural flavors, but
yeah,
like that's going to be the next thing that people are like, oh my God, there's natural flavors and everything. That's why we don't use them.
yeah.
Um,
And they're not
nobody knows
natural?
Nobody knows what they are.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
but
I
that's
think
really where they started.
that's the industry's best kept secret, um, is natural flavors and what that really is. But yeah, we
Yeah.
can do a whole episode on natural flavors as part of the process. No, that's fascinating. Just from a development standpoint, right? I mean, what's so unique, I think, is to your point, you have a roadmap and kind of a playbook already. You can look at what's happening in the alcoholic beverage space, look at what works, and then make it a
Yep.
process to say, okay, these are already really popular. Why are they popular? Now let's go find a unique way to make this our own. And I love the fact that in the process, you're purposely not triggering people who are, in recovery, and you're also removing all these things that are unnecessary. So as you think about how you're sweetening them or kind of going through that, like what are those kind of processes? What kind of natural things are you using to do that?
Well, this is something I also learned from Rachel Drury at Daily Harvest, where I was the head of marketing for their first couple of years while starting Curious.
Yeah,
And so
that's a
to
really nice
sweeten,
overlap.
yeah, I mean, it was huge. I learned so much from Rachel and from the team there. And shout out to Jess Young, who made all of the original Daily Harvest smoothies and helped teach me about adaptogens as well. And what I learned that relates to sweeteners was, don't use any of them. Just use the fruits themselves.
Yeah,
It means that your ingredients are going to be more expensive, but also you can charge more when you're not just relying on high fructose corn syrup or cane
yeah,
sugar. And more people in our target demographic are looking to have something that is a treat, but without the guilt,
yes,
and
yeah,
that's really what we focus on. Is That's why we use organic pomegranates from Turkey. They're the best pomegranates in the world. That's why we use blood oranges from Sicily.
yeah,
They're the best blood oranges in the world. We're obsessed with flavor. And we want to make things that are going to be dynamic and interesting, and that you're going to want to come back to. And that's really important to us, is to have the world's finest ingredients and to put it all right there in the bottle.
yeah. That's great. Yeah, that creates a sweetness I think that's far more satisfying than when it has all that other stuff in it as part of the process, which is pretty incredible, as you think through that. So, one area of customer experience, right, and motivations, behaviors, right? You're creating an experience for people. I think you've kind of talked to that. It's this really important companion as people are participating in society and friends and all those kind of things. Um, how do you think about the role you place in the market from a price standpoint?
Mm.
Right? Because you have all these natural ingredients. And so as you're kind of feeling that, that's been a topic I've seen in the non-alcoholic space keep coming up is, what's the role of pricing? How does it work? Should these things be the same price as alcoholic drinks, et cetera? What's your philosophy, strategy, thoughts?
Well, the numbers don't really lie. It's more expensive to make quality non-alcoholic products than it is to make alcohol.
Yeah.
That's just the simple truth. People have been conned into believing that alcohol equals expensive. It's not. It's actually relatively cheap to make, you know?
Yeah.
And when you have to, take a non-alcoholic wine, for example, and, our non-alcoholic wines, we stack flavors. We don't make alcohol and then remove it. Okay. So when I'm making a non-alcoholic rosé, I'm getting Chardonnay grapes from California. Still got to grow the grapes.
Mhm.
Those grapes are going to come in. We're going to then add grape skin extract to layer on some of the flavor that you're not going to get because we don't have, alcoholic fermentation.
Mhm.
Then we're going to layer on white pepper. We're going to lay on extracts of pine. We're going to put in fermented echinacea, but stop fermentation at the point where echinacea becomes alcohol.
Yeah.
We're going to then get kanna from South Africa, which is an incredible plant that helps you keep your dopamine recirculating in your body. It's amazing. Like, just
Yeah.
feel a little bit happier. We're also going to get poppy from, extract from California. And we're going to blend all of these things together to bring together all of those different ingredients and then put it into one bottle that is then carbonated and then pasteurized so that it can be shelf stable. That is a far more complicated process to bring things together from 5 different continents than it is to take wine grapes and ferment them. And that's an incredibly intricate process, winemaking. And being
Yeah.
a vintner is no easy job, but it's not bringing things from 5 different continents and bringing them together into one bottle. So when people are like, "Oh, this is non-alcoholic. Why is this as expensive or more expensive than alcohol?" It's because it's harder to make and because you have to use more ingredients.
Yeah. Complex, right?
Yeah.
The flavors, the experience, that whole process. So one of the questions I have for you then, as we kind of wrap up, because number one, I've got to go make some purchases right after this on your site. It sounds delicious as part of the process. And I'd just be curious, as you've built this beverage brand that's exciting, that's growing quickly, that has 10 different products, and looks like it's just going to, keep going. What's maybe one of your number one tips or philosophies, rules that you live by as you think about customer success and your business that you would share with somebody?
Mm. Well, when I think about customer success, kind of have to define who your ideal customer is first, and then figure out how to attract them um, by placing yourself in their shoes. You know, like I'm already one of our, target customers.
Yeah.
But I think that when you want to focus in on building a community of people that are your customers, your clients, you have to think about how you can add more value than anybody else, and that's what we do from product formulation through to how easy it is to get it at your door. Convenience is a huge piece of it too. And that's one reason why we're moving more into retail as well, is because there are people that don't shop online as much,
Yeah.
or they don't try new products online as much, but they might pick up a 4-pack of Curious Zero at, their Sprouts or their Whole Foods. And so that's something else that is like, okay, that's adding value to people. If they have a party and they're like, oh, I forgot to place an order on curiouselixirs.com, but I can go pick it up down the street.
Yes.
That's great. Or we had a customer, she called me on my cell phone recently because her daughter was pregnant and coming into town and she wanted to make sure that she had something fancy for her. So she was like, "Hey, JW, I know you don't normally, hear from customers like this, but I really need some help on this." And we were like, "No problem. We're going to get that over to you. We're going to make sure that that gets expedited." Even though we don't normally have, overnight shipping,
Yeah.
we were like, "Hey, if we get this order in today, it's going to make it to you with at least 2 days in advance." And that's the sort of thing where, like, if you can add more value than anybody else,
Yeah.
you're going to keep that customer. and they're going to probably tell 3 to 5 friends about it, be like, wow, they really went above and beyond. So I'd say that's probably number one.
Yeah.
And we try to do the same thing for our restaurant partners here in New York. That's part of the reason why we have this clubhouse in Williamsburg. Is if we have a Michelin star restaurant that all of a sudden has a ton of sober or sober curious people through the door and they're running low on product, we want to make sure that we can get them another case so that they never
Yeah.
run out. Um,
Yeah.
because that's, it's great that we have an awesome distributor here in New York City, but if that's going to come next day and they have a special event that night, we got to be able to turn
Let's
things
take care
around
of them.
pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I would imagine some of your growth has been you have the benefit of a food and beverage product. Like I think about a lot of items that are on the shelf or that you could buy direct to consumer, and they're usually consumed solo, right? I'm eating at the kitchen table, I take it to work, whatever those kind of things are. But I would imagine a decent amount of your growth comes from the fact that your product is meant to be used in social circumstances. So naturally, there is this kind of virality to the experience where people are like, "What are you drinking?" And it creates conversation. Is that something that you see?
Absolutely. It even comes down into our packaging. Like our bottles are designed with 2 to 3 servings per person. I mean, per bottle.
Yeah.
So like it's designed to share with a friend. If you get, a bottle of Curious Number One or Curious Number Two, that's 2 servings per bottle. It's like, oh, I've got a friend who likes spicy margaritas. Let me try Curious Number Two. Let me pour some into my glass, and here, why don't you give this a try? And they give it a try and they're like, ooh, that's good. Let me have a glass. No
Yeah.
problem. I got another serving right here. I'll split it with you. That
Totally.
creates a shared moment. And that's something that we wanted to do from the beginning, is to have something where you can split one of these with a friend easily. It's not like, you have to go out and just get a single serve and hoard it to yourself.
Yeah.
But customers also have asked for that, and we've released that too, where like now we have our little, mini cans where it's like a single serve. This is our Sicilian Spritz, Curious Number Four, in these little gold nugget cans. And those are really fun too, because people are like, oh, I just want to slip something into my purse. I want to slip it into my bag. I want to take it to the beach. And even though we had all of our different flavors in bottles, we got to listen to our customers too. And they're like, I want to take some of this stuff to go and not be worried about it breaking in my bag. And we're like, okay. And it took us a year, but we were able to find a way to do
Yeah,
that.
that's awesome. If a listener is saying, "Hey, I've just heard about this, awesome brand, all these great products, and I want to go out and purchase them." Number one, where should they go? And two, do you have any product recommendations of where they should start in your line of 10?
Absolutely. So the best deal you're going to find and the way to try the most products for the least cost is going to be our Curious Cocktail Club. So that's a rotating monthly variety pack. So we'll send you, 3 different flavors each month. And, by the time you reach, month 3 or 4, you're going to have tried everything.
That's awesome.
And you're also going to get a deal on it. You're going to save, up to 25%. So that's the place to go. We also have an awesome flavor quiz. So you can go through and be like, oh, I like spicy things. No, I want refreshing things. I would say if you like spicy things, start off with Curious Number Two. That one's great. It's been named to the New York Times best non-alcoholic drinks list 5 years in a row.
No,
People love that one. It's smoky, it's spicy. But if you just want something that's really refreshing, I would say go with Curious Number Nine. It's not a wine, it's number nine.
that's
Um,
cool.
and it's going to make you feel like a little bit lifted, too, which is kind of one of the side benefits of using adaptogens and functional herbs. Is it gives people another reason to enjoy these with other people, is just feeling a little bit of a lift, a little bit of a boost.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we kind of wrap it up? Last words.
I'm really grateful to you, Seth. Thank you for having me on here and for letting us share, our story. And, I hope that, 20, 30 years from now, like, all of our kids are celebrating and toasting at somebody's wedding and holding up a glass of Curious right next to the Dom Perignon.
I
So
love that.
that's the vision. Thanks
That's a
for having me.
beautiful vision. Yeah. Thanks for joining and appreciate it. And thanks for listening to Why People Buy.